The officer wasn't sure why the man unnerved him. He was polite, cooperative, no visible signs of resistance. He even smiled when they asked him to step outside. But there was something behind that smile that felt too practiced, too present. It didn't flicker. It didn't change with tone. It simply held. And when Natalie Rios, tattered, bleeding, barefoot, stood behind the patrol car crying that he tried to kill her, the man in the doorway only tilted his head and said, "She's stronger than the others. I was hoping she'd be." That was how it started for the public. But for Jack Delaney, the story began years earlier, long before anyone knew his name, long before the disappearances, the bones, and the whispers that would later haunt small-town police stations across 5 states. To the world, he was Smiling Jack, a clean-cut software engineer with a blank slate and a calm demeanor. But to investigators, he became something far more chilling, a predator who didn't hunt for need or revenge, but for understanding. Jack Delaney lived on Willow Ridge Lane in Columbus, Ohio. It was a kind of neighborhood with block parties in June, Halloween parade in October, and backyard snowmen in January. Kids played basketball in cul-de-sacs. Lawn signs announced school play dates. The biggest complaint most residents had was the HOA fines for unpainted shutters. And Jack blended in perfectly. To the neighbors, Jack was quiet but kind. He helped Mrs. Langford carry her groceries. He shoveled snow from Mr. Riley's driveway. He handed out full-size candy bars on Halloween. No one thought to ask why he didn't have family, or why no one ever visited, or why, despite living there for 6 years, no one had ever been inside his house. Jack worked remotely for a cybersecurity firm. He told his co-workers he preferred efficiency over water cooler talk. They didn't mind. He always met deadlines. He rarely took time off. When he did, it was never for vacation. He drove a silver Toyota. He wore fitted gray polos. He smiled, often and effortlessly. But what no one knew, what even his closest colleagues would later confess in horror, was that Jack Delaney had no emotional connections, no attachments, and no empathy. He was, in every clinical sense, a high-functioning psychopath. Jack wasn't born a monster, or at least not in any obvious way. His childhood was one of structure and silence. His father, a retired colonel, believed in discipline. His mother was a cold perfectionist, more interested in etiquette than affection. Jack learned early that emotions were messy and unnecessary. They didn't help, they hindered. At age 7, he dissected a squirrel he found in the backyard, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. He wanted to see how it worked. His mother scolded him, not for the act, but for the mess he left behind. In middle school, Jack began experimenting with control. He manipulated classmates into fights, then watched from the sidelines. He once convinced a girl that her best friend hated her, just to observe the fallout. There was no malice, just data collection. In high school, his fascination with psychology began. He read Freud, Jung, and later, fringe materials from online forums. He kept a notebook filled with behavioral patterns. What made people cry, what made them laugh, what triggered fear. But he always knew one thing. He didn't feel things like others did. He mimicked them. Perfectly. Seamlessly. Like a chameleon. When a school counselor flagged him for sociopathic tendencies, his parents switched schools. Problem solved. Except it wasn't. College was where Jack began testing boundaries. He enrolled in a double major, computer science and behavioral psychology. One gave him structure. The other gave him tools. He ran unofficial social experiments under fake names. He invited classmates to study groups, where he tested responses to fear-based stories, traumatic images, and stress scenarios. He asked questions like, would you rather die saving a stranger or live knowing you didn't? If you could erase your guilt forever, would you? He filmed people's reactions, illegally, quietly. He annotated every tick, every silence, every shift in breathing. One subject, a shy journalism major named Karina, once broke down in tears during a scenario test. Jack simply noted, subject emotionally vulnerable. Cry response at 4 minutes, 37 seconds. Rapid pupil dilation. No defensive posture. High potential for collapse under pressure. He never laid a hand on her, but he kept the footage. By graduation, Jack had built a profile system for human emotional thresholds, a kind of emotional fingerprinting. He began theorizing that every person had a breaking point, a precise trigger that could be calculated like code. And once that theory took hold, Jack's curiosity turned dark. He no longer wanted to observe. He wanted to test in real time. Jack took a job in cybersecurity. Remote, high-paying, invisible. It gave him freedom. With time, he built an online identity, Smile and Splice. On surface forums, he posed as a trauma researcher. On darker corners of the web, he hinted at live experiments. He was never explicit, just enough to pique interest. That's how he found his first victim. Michelle Riggins was 23, a nursing student and a psychology buff. She ran a blog about dark minds and posted frequently about profiling killers. She wanted to understand evil. Jack sent her an email. We're building a private trauma study group for those interested in psychology beyond the textbooks, interested in a real-world case. Michelle responded in 42 minutes. He invited her to a cabin 2 hours outside the city, so it was part of a clinical immersion weekend. She told her roommate she was excited, that she might finally meet real investigators. She disappeared that Friday. Her phone last pinged off a tower near Lake Gannett. Police assumed she drowned. There was no forced entry, no sign of foul play. But Jack had logged her reactions, her emotional collapses, her final journal entry, which he found in her backpack. This isn't a workshop. This is a trap. He kept the journal. He labeled her Subject 1. Michelle was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Jack Delaney tested 7 more victims across 3 states. Young adults, curious minds. Each had some tie to psychology, ethics, or behavioral science. He believed if you wanted to understand monsters, you were volunteering to meet one. Every victim was logged in a black journal labeled simply, Rules of Engagement. Inside, written with disturbing clarity, were the protocols Jack developed for abduction and psychological breakdown. Each rule had detailed case notes and victim-specific reflections. These were not ramblings. They were methodical instructions, refined over time. Rule number 1, never choose someone you know personally. Familiarity breeds chaos. Detachment enables study. Jack never harmed colleagues or neighbors. To them, he was always Jack, the helpful IT guy who brought donuts once a month. Rule number 2, target the curious. Curiosity is the purest vulnerability. It disguises itself as intelligence but begs for manipulation. This is why he used academic forums and private Reddit groups. It was where he found the thinkers, the ones who couldn't resist solving a mystery. Rule number 3, smile always. It disarms. It calms. It creates a false sense of control. Humans equate smiles with safety. Every victim reported Jack smiling even at their most desperate moments, sometimes mid-torture. Survivors said it was worse than the pain. Rule number 4, document everything. Jack kept hours of footage and audio. He had infrared body cams, hidden mics, and a homemade reaction monitor that tracked pupil dilation and heart rate. The FBI would later call his documentation a psychological Holocaust museum. Rule number 5, never get caught twice. He constantly rotated vehicles, rental homes, and burner phones. Each experiment happened in a different location: cabins, storage units, basements, and air rooms. But perhaps the most chilling thing was that Jack didn't see these people as victims. He called them subjects. Each one was cataloged like an insect in a box. Subject 2, male, age 20, endurance 29 hours. Subject 3, female, age 27, broke during auditory isolation. Subject 6, exhibited aggressive rebound. Neutralized. When asked later in court why he stopped after Subject 8, Jack replied, "I didn't. They just stopped surviving." Natalie Rios was 20, a psychology undergrad with a part-time job at a bookstore. She was sharp, observant, but chronically anxious. She used fiction to process real emotions and true crime as a coping mechanism. She wasn't like Jack's other targets. She had boundaries, walls, but she also had curiosity, which she preyed on. She received an email invitation from emotionstitcher@gmail.com. "We're hosting a field study weekend for trauma responders. You've been selected based on your blog posts. All travel covered. Strictly academic. No risk. Real data. Real insight." Natalie hesitated, but her best friend Brianna encouraged her. "You're always talking about this stuff," she said. "Maybe it's a breakthrough opportunity." Natalie left on Friday afternoon. She texted her mom from a gas station 2 hours outside Pittsburgh. Then nothing. At the Airbnb property Jack had rented under a fake ID. Things moved fast. Jack was friendly at first. Clean clothes. Nice cologne. He served tea and spoke about emotional detox exercises. But Natalie noticed inconsistencies. No signs of other guests. Windows nailed shut. A knife on the counter with a red-tinted handle. She pretended to be tired and excused herself early. Jack nodded politely and locked the hallway door behind her. Inside the room, she realized what was happening. She texted 911, but there was no signal, no Wi-Fi. She slid the phone into her shoe, heart racing. Jack returned 2 hours later with duct tape. She played asleep. When he leaned over, she held her breath. He paused, then slowly whispered, "Don't worry, Natalie. You're going to help so many people." He left to prepare the environment. That's when she acted. She shattered the bathroom mirror, used a shard to slice through the curtain string, pried open the air vent, and crawled out barefoot. She ran blindly into the woods, cold, scraped, bleeding. Her feet tore open on broken branches. Her hands trembled. She finally collapsed near an old forest cabin. The ranger who found her said she was whispering just one word over and over: "Smile." Jack didn't resist arrest. He opened the door calmly when the police arrived, said nothing incriminating, smiled when they cuffed him. "Is this about the girl?" he asked. Inside, what the officers found was worse than any case they'd ever handled. The Airbnb's basement had been converted into a psychological testing chamber. Walls lined with soundproof foam. Cameras hidden in ceiling tiles. Hooks on the walls. Plastic tarps stained with blood. A full surgical kit. A projector displaying old footage of previous sessions. In a side room was a desk. On it, 6 hard drives and a leather-bound journal labeled Symphony of Reaction. The journal contained sketches of human faces, twisted in pain, fear, apathy, each with notes. Jack had rated screams by pitch, noted pupil dilation under various stimuli, tracked how long people took to stop resisting. Every victim had a page. Some had autopsy photos. Others had only silhouettes. They found DNA from 5 missing persons across 4 states. In a hidden compartment, they discovered something else: resin-preserved limbs, not just trophies. Jack had posed them in classical art formations. One hand reached skyward, one curled into a fist, one held a paper smiley face drawn in red ink. FBI profiler Dana Kirrell later said, "He didn't kill out of passion. He killed to study. And when the study was over, he curated them." News of Jack Delaney's arrest spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, every major network in the country had a headline: "The Smiling Psychopath. FBI uncovers horror lab in Pennsylvania woods." The man next door who studied fear. Natalie Rios, the girl who escaped a monster with a smile. Journalists swarmed Willow Ridge Lane in Columbus. Neighbors stood in disbelief. Some cried. Some refused to believe it. Mrs. Langford, the elderly woman he'd helped with groceries, was quoted saying, "Jack? No, never. He helped my son change a flat tire. He couldn't hurt anyone." But investigators uncovered more than she or anyone could imagine. The FBI released a partial list of missing persons linked to Jack's movements. Michelle Riggins, 23, missing from Ohio, 2017. Evan Grant, 19, vanished in Kentucky, 2018. Talia Green, 21, disappeared from Indiana, 2019. Caleb Morrow, 22, last seen in Pittsburgh, 2020. Each disappearance corresponded with Jack's Airbnb and car rental records. Social media exploded. Armchair detectives combed through forums looking for Smile and Splice and a motion stitcher. Thousands claimed to have interacted with him. Only a few were verified. The most chilling discovery came when Jack's hard drives were decrypted. There were hours of footage. Victims undergoing mental stress exercises, isolation tactics, sleep deprivation. In some, Jack could be heard calmly narrating like a professor. Subject 4. Heart rate now below baseline. Signs of psychological detachment. Note the eye tremor. The footage was never released to the public. One FBI agent who viewed it resigned the following week. Another entered therapy. Jack's trial began 6 months later in a federal courtroom in Ohio. It became one of the most watched criminal trials in modern history. Broadcasted on court TV. Streamed on YouTube. Dissected by every true crime podcast and social media platform. He pled not guilty by reason of intellectual imperative, an unprecedented phrase. He claimed that he was conducting groundbreaking emotional research on fear adaptation, and that his actions were unethical but essential for evolution. Jack represented himself in part. He worked alongside court-appointed counsel, but often took the floor to challenge expert witnesses and psychologists. When forensic psychiatrist Dr. Ethan Walden diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder with psychopathic traits, Jack smiled and responded, "You define disorder by deviation. I define it by utility." The prosecution painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer who wore a mask of civility. They brought in survivor Natalie Rios, now in therapy and under protection. She testified bravely. She recalled every moment. The trap, the fear, the broken glass, the escape. When asked how she survived, she replied, "Because I didn't panic. That's what he wanted. He wanted to scream. I wouldn't give it to him." Jack showed no emotion as she spoke, just sat there, smiling. The prosecution rested with one final line. Jack Delaney didn't lose his soul. He never had one to begin with. The jury deliberated for just over 5 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentence: 12 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The judge called him the most intelligent monster I've ever faced. Jack simply said, "I'll be studied longer than I studied them." That's the irony. Jack Delaney's case is now part of forensic psychology courses across the country. He is studied not just for his crimes, but for the precision and purpose behind them. Unlike most serial killers, Jack didn't act out of trauma, revenge, or rage. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't sexually motivated. He didn't stalk his victims traditionally. Instead, he viewed humans as systems. Systems he wanted to break and measure. He believed the human soul, if it existed, could be charted. FBI profiler Dana Carroll described him as the purest form of cognitive predator we've ever encountered. He didn't need chaos. He needed control. Control was the point. He would compare to figures like Ted Bundy and Ed Kemper. But experts agree Jack was different. Bundy wanted power. Kemper wanted attention. Jack wanted data. His journals included charts measuring emotional decay under isolation, ratings of victim compliance over time, noted variables like lighting, temperature, even background music. He once wrote, "Fear is not the absence of courage. It's the presence of awareness. I simply heightened that awareness until it snapped." Several universities requested access to his writings. The FBI released limited excerpts to licensed institutions only. Some believe Jack's writings should be destroyed to prevent inspiring others. Others argue we must study monsters to prevent them. Natalie Rios wrote a memoir titled The Girl Who Escaped a Smile. It became a bestseller, translated into 16 languages. She now speaks on trauma survival and teaches courses on digital manipulation and predator behavior. But she still lives in a gated community, uses a different name in public, and sleeps with the lights on. She once told a podcast, "There are worse things than being afraid. One of them is pretending you're not." The house on Willow Ridge Lane was auctioned and eventually torn down. Neighbors say they still feel strange walking by the lot. Some say the silence there feels off. Jack Delaney now resides in solitary confinement at federal supermax prison in Colorado. He has not spoken to press. But once a year on the anniversary of his arrest, he sends a letter to the FBI. No words, just a drawing of a smiley face and the phrase, "Still observing." 6 months after Jack Delaney's conviction, a sealed envelope arrived at the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit in Quantico. It had no return address. The envelope contained a single-page letter in block handwriting, a flash drive, a black smiley face sticker identical to those found near Jack's abduction sites. The letter read, "I thought you might like to see the rest of the footage. You only saw the final trials. But the early data, the raw material, that's where the fear lives. The truth is, I was refining. You stopped me before I reached my thesis. P.S. I always knew the girl would run. That was the point." The flash drive contained a chilling series of early beta tests, lesser-known victims, failed attempts, even footage of Jack abandoning test sites because the subject wasn't right. He had practiced. On the third video, Jack spoke directly to the camera. "I'm not angry I was caught. I'm disappointed the story ended before the second chapter. Maybe someone else will finish it." The statement sparked panic across federal channels. Was Jack hinting at a partner? While Jack operated alone, a growing number of experts and analysts began piecing together anomalies in the case. Evidence suggesting Jack may not have acted entirely solo. Theory 1, the recruiter. Some believe Jack had an accomplice who helped lure victims online. Investigators found trace data on forum accounts linked to someone using a variation of Jack's alias, SM1 Le Splice. These accounts continued posting even after Jack's arrest, quoting his rules and offering remote research internships. While most assumed it was a sick troll, 2 young women came forward reporting eerily similar invitations. After Jack's incarceration, they were lucky. Both declined. The FBI opened an internal task force codenamed Splice 2. No arrests have been made. Theory 2, successor. Others believe Jack had a protege, possibly someone he mentored in coding or psychological forums. Some of his early online interactions suggest he was testing new minds for research alignment. One recovered chat log from 2016 read, "Understanding fear requires more than study. It requires dissection. Let me teach you how to peel it back." This theory became central to a 2025 documentary titled The Second Smile. It featured blurred faces of ex-colleagues and forum users, one of whom claimed Jack used to grade them on emotional control. Theory 3, the copycat catalyst. After Jack's trial, the number of online communities glamorizing emotional domination surged. A subreddit named r/emotion testers gained over 50,000 members before being banned. Jack became, to some dark corners of the internet, a legend. This was Jack's legacy, not a body count, but a blueprint. During a routine review of Jack's seized materials, a behavioral analyst noticed something strange in his final journal. The last page was blank, except for a series of faint dots and dashes beneath the leather binding. UV light revealed a Morse code message. It wasn't just the test subjects. Some were control variables. You met one. You let him go. The team immediately began cross-referencing every person Jack interacted with during travel windows. One name stood out, Bryce Lantham, a rideshare driver who took Jack to 3 different rentals across 2 states in 2019. Bryce was interviewed and cleared at the time, but upon revisiting his home, agents discovered a locked basement and a disturbing collection of surveillance monitors showing wooded areas, bus stops, and rural cabins. Bryce was arrested on charges of stalking and unlawful surveillance. Though he denied knowing Jack, evidence showed they had exchanged encrypted emails. Jack had, it seems, been teaching. Today, the house on Willow Ridge Lane is gone, leveled, paved over, turned into a walking trail no one really uses. Natalie Rios lives in Oregon now. She speaks in universities but never uses Jack's name aloud. She once told an audience, "You don't kill monsters by naming them. You kill them by denying them legacy." But Jack's legacy continues to haunt law enforcement, educators, and criminal minds around the world. His journals are kept under restricted access in a federal archive in Virginia, labeled Case File Cognitive Predator 001. And once a year, without fail, a package still arrives at the FBI. No return address. Inside, a single smiley face, a printed quote from Jack's journals, and recently, new names. No one knows who sent them, but everyone fears the same thing, that smiling Jack may have stopped smiling. But someone else has learned to grin.